Cyrus II of Anshan, who was raised as a shepherd's boy, grew up to rule the world's largest empire, spanning dozens of peoples, cultures, and languages, transforming the idea of rulership into a noble one and letting many captive people go back to their native lands. But where does he come from? And who are his Persian people that he leads to glory? Let's talk about it. So in the last episode, we talked about the Bronze Age collapse, and one of the consequences of it was that many empires living next to the coast got shredded by the mysterious sea peoples. However, one empire, the Assyrian, who is far away from the coast, had absolutely zero negative influences. In fact, due to other empires crumbling, the Assyrians quickly grew and actually became the largest empire the world had ever known in that period, the 7th century BC, spanning everything from Egypt, Canaan, all the way to the Medians, and also the Parsa and Elamites, or Elamites, in the east. Known as the first true military superpower, the Assyrians were very impressive in their military capabilities. They had military engineers who built siege engines. They were also riding directly on horseback. And perhaps most intimidatingly, they used a terror tactic where they promised that any city that would resist their conquests would be burned to the ground and its people deported as slaves, such as happened to the Israelites in Judea, where the Neo-Assyrian Empire sent them to exile in Babylon. Furthermore, the Assyrians were cruel leaders. One would even say hardcore. They would confiscate religious idols from the peoples that they conquered and bring them back to Assyria so as to capture the soul of the people and demoralize them from ever rising up again. One quote from their late king Ashurbanipal tells us the story of their vibe. "I had the sanctuaries of the land of Elam utterly destroyed, and I counted its gods and goddesses as ghosts. I destroyed and devastated the tombs of their earlier and later kings. I took their bones to Assyria. I prevented their ghosts from sleeping and deprived them of funerary offerings and libations. On a march of 125 days, I devastated the districts of the land Elam and scattered salt and cress over them." Meanwhile, during this time, in the turn of the 7th century BC, we know of a man called Achemenid, who was, for the first time ever, able to unite the Parsa people, better known to us as the Persians. The Parsa were, until that time, a nomadic / hunter-gatherer / raiding type of party, and didn't really have any significant cultural achievements. One of the reasons that we know this is because we don't have any system of writing dating to that time. However, Achemenid was able to unite the Parsa people under one ruler himself, by thus founding the Achemenid Persian dynasty. And in this moment, when the Elamites were being absolutely devastated by the Assyrian Empire, Achemenid and his Persian people took the opportunity and took control over the ancient city of Anshan, who was actually under Elamite rule for like 3,000 years before this, so definitely a big deal. It is also approximately during this time that we hear about the Persian people becoming more interested and starting to fully adopt Zoroastrianism, a religion that had been founded several centuries prior in the region. Zoroastrianism is actually the first religion in the world to discuss the dualism of good and evil. It describes the universe as a battle between Ahura Mazda, which stands for truth and light, and Angra Mainyu, which stands for lies and darkness. Angra's power is called Druj, which stands for chaos and deceit, which is opposite to Asha, which stands for truth and justice, and also stands for cosmic order, enabling the Zoroastrians to accept and explain the difference between different peoples, traditions. Zoroastrianism gave a moral framework for the Persian leaders to work with. They were not only going for power, they were also promoting truth and the light. Meanwhile, back in the oh-so-intolerant Assyrian Empire, these guys are having revolts left and right. Exactly at this time, another nomadic people had been united under a new leader. The Median people in the north, they were expert horseback riders, and they also employed horseback archers, which is a famous tactic known from many different peoples and most people associate with the Mongols, almost 1,500 years later. Recognizing an opportunity with a bunch of revolts in the Assyrian Empire, the Median tribes to the north signed a cooperation agreement with the king of Babylon, who was also under Assyrian rule, and together they attacked the empire. The Medians were able to push back the Assyrians in several key locations, culminating in the fall of their capital, Nineveh, in 612 BC. Thus began the short-lived but very large Median Empire, which you never heard of, probably. However, they were not different at all from the Assyrians. They were cruel, and they had a lot of rebellions under them, and they were very violent. So now, we get to our main story. Alright, so we have the Median Empire. These guys exist. And they have a king called Astyages. And one day, Astyages has a dream about his daughter. The king dreams that his daughter urinates so much that it floods his capital and eventually all of Asia. And he gets spooked, and he doesn't do anything about it. But then several months later, he has another dream that his daughter's womb has vines growing out of it, covering all of Asia. He goes to the dream interpreters, and they say, "My king, this means that she will bear a child who will control all of Asia." He doesn't want to hear of this. He's going to be king forever. So he marries his daughter to some Persian noble, because no Persian would come to rule Asia, right? His daughter Mandane becomes married to Cambyses I, the father of Cyrus the Great. However, several months later, the king still has his fears and concerns. So, upon hearing that this baby is born, he orders his general Harpagus to go and kill the baby. Harpagus arrives in Anshan, picks the baby up, and he plans to go to the wilderness and just abandon them there until his heart betrays him and he says, "Oh, it's just a little baby. What's he gonna do to somebody?" So he gives it to a shepherd. And the shepherd loves the baby, and he and his wife grow him together. 10 years later, a boy and his friends are playing pretend king. A noble's son is appointed as one of the slaves, and a commoner is given the role of a king. He whips the noble's son as part of the game. The noble's son goes crying to his parents and says, "This commoner whipped me." This story reaches all the way to Astyages the king, who says, "Who is this boy? Bring him in front of me." Upon seeing the boy and his father, the shepherd confesses that actually the son doesn't belong to him. He was given the boy 10 years ago. The king connects the dots and realizes that it's his cursed grandson. However, at this opportunity, the dream interpreters have this take. "Well, you see, my king, because he participated in a game and as a commoner was made king above the noble's son, surely that fulfills the prophecy." And so the king is pleased, and he says, "You know what, this kid is fine. Send him to his actual real biological parents, Cambyses I, king of Anshan, and his wife, my daughter, Mandane." However, the king Astyages is very unpleased that his general Harpagus didn't follow his orders. He orders the son of Harpagus to be killed, cooked, and roasted, and then invites the general to a feast. After dining, the king reveals to Harpagus that they just ate his son, to which Harpagus keeps his cool and says, "Whatever pleases my king." But he remembers, and he waits for the time. Several years later, Cyrus II inherits the throne of Anshan from his father, Cambyses I, who dies. Upon hearing that the cursed grandson is now the king of a city-state, the king Astyages immediately orders his general Harpagus to go and invade and kill and bring him the head of this Cyrus. But when the two armies meet, Harpagus defects, along with many of his soldiers and several nobles that are there, immediately crushing the Median army in the confusion of losing more of half its forces to the enemy side. Cyrus, now together with the general Harpagus, in the combined Median and Persian force, decimate the remains of the Median Empire and eventually conquer it all. But this is where the story is different. Cruel Assyrians, cruel Medians, nice Persians, ladies and gentlemen. Cyrus becomes the new ruler of the Median Persian Empire, and the first thing that he does is keep all of the local nobles and elites in their places. He appoints them as local kings under him. And so he founds this system of satrapies, which is basically these counties, and each county has its governor, the satrap. The satrap is in charge of keeping the order, collecting taxes, and preventing raiders from stealing shit. And so basically Cyrus says, it's the same empire, it's under new management, we're going to treat everybody nice. He doesn't execute anybody, he doesn't enslave anybody, he doesn't put anybody in jail. He takes most of the top generals, the officers, the elite, the people working in the capital city for the previous king, and he appoints them as his own advisors, counselors, generals. He makes the best use of the best men under his conquered people, and they love him for it. So Cyrus is doing his thing, he's making his reforms, he's living his best life, but meanwhile, across the border to the west, a very rich and envious king watches. His name is Croesus, synonymous with being so rich. Why were the Lydians under Croesus so rich? Well, that's because of the river Pactolus, which flowed and had literal gold flowing into it. Legend had it that this is where King Midas washed away his golden touch, forever blessing the river with a little bit of gold. So basically what happened is that this king is like, I don't know about this new neighbor, man. I had a deal with the Medians. Suddenly it's under new management. I'm not sure about the Cyrus. I'm not sure about his intention. Maybe this guy's crooked. Maybe he's evil. I don't know anything. It's the old world. I'm not going to send him a telegram. So he goes to the Oracle of Delphi, the famous location where a priestess smoking bleep from the ground is basically meeting him. O great Oracle of Delphi, I have a desire to invade the Persian Empire. What would be the result, according to the oracle, if I took such an action?
If Croesus were to attack the Persians, he would bring down a great empire.
A great empire would fall. Pleased with the result of the oracle's telling, Croesus launches a surprise attack by the Lydian people in the province of Cappadocia. The Persians are completely surprised. However, Croesus then goes back to his capital to gather his allies from the Spartans, the Athenians, and the Babylonians. Eventually, the two armies are set to meet in the Battle of Thymbra. In the night before the battle happens, Cyrus gathers his top generals, and among them our old friend Harpagus, who defected from the Medians to join him. Harpagus tells him that the cavalry of the Lydians have never seen camels, and they would despise their smell. So he suggests that he takes all of his best men, put them on camels instead of horses, and put those at the front of the army in the morning. When the morning comes, this is exactly what happens. And the Lydian cavalry, afraid and just disgusted by the smell of the camels, do a U-turn right into their own infantry line and decimate their own army. Cyrus's army does quick work of the remains of the Lydians and eventually chases Croesus back to his capital Sardis, where he tortures him and kills him for his treatment of Persian civilians earlier in the campaign in Cappadocia. So Cyrus didn't even ask for any trouble, he was literally just existing. Another king comes to invade Anshan, boom, loses an empire. Another king comes and surprise attacks him to the west, takes his empire as well. Seems easy, right? The next famous war is between the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire, but we're not sure who started the hostilities. What we do know is that the king of Babylon at the time was highly unpopular with the own, Babylonian people. His name is Nabonidus, and we know about this from the fact that he didn't even follow the god Marduk, which you might remember from my Babylonian episode is the main god of the city of Babylon. We also know from the time that there is a quote that says, "The king Nabonidus did not come to Babylon for the new year. The procession for the god Marduk was canceled." This guy was putting Marduk to shame. You can't have shit like that happen in Babylon. Nabonidus was following the moon god Sin and didn't make any honors for Marduk, leaving the elites, the priests, and just, Marduk lovers really disappointed with him. Cyrus knows of this, and so he sends forth ancient propaganda pamphlets proclaiming his god, Cyrus's god, told him to free Marduk and to allow the righteous worship of him in the city of Babylon. he starts making inroads into their society. And eventually, an army of the Persian Median Empire meets an army of the Babylonians at the fateful Battle of Opis, where they absolutely demolish them. Later, they divert the flow of the river Euphrates, which flows into the city of Babylon. They are able to basically dry the moat, which was protecting the city. And Cyrus's men walk in water up to here, and they just kind of walk into the city, and the city kind of surrenders. The king isn't even home. And the people welcome him as a liberator. They're like, fuck yeah, dude, finally a king who's gonna give honor to my boy Marduk, let's go! So here we are. Cyrus II, who grew up as a shepherd, is now the king of the largest empire the world had ever seen. It's larger than the Assyrian Empire. It lasted way longer than the Assyrian Empire. And it really, really seriously laid the groundwork for every other empire you know from that region who came after them, Alexander the Great, and by far the Romans. This guy was into managing the people that he conquered in a way that, respected them in order to maximize peace and tax collection. He wasn't interested in having revolts happen. By the way, what I spoke about in the beginning of the episode, the Assyrians actually conquered Judea and deported the Israelites living there at the time. When Cyrus captured the city of Babylon, he released all of the Jews back into their own land.
By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down,
allowing them to rebuild the Temple of Jehovah in Jerusalem. This is clearly stated in the Old Testament and also earned Cyrus the title of Messiah. Cyrus's system of administration completely overhauled the idea of empire building and was able to get the Persian Empire to a place of riches that nobody had ever imagined before. By the way, by the height of this empire, under the king Darius I, they ruled over people who spoke Hindi, ancient Egyptian, Greek, Persian, Babylonian, Akkadian, Hebrew, and many more languages. So finally, we get to the legendary end of Cyrus II. So in one account, we know that Cyrus has given a speech to both of his sons about how to rule justly and how to be a good king and how to care about your people and how to uphold the rights of Ahura Mazda, the gods of Zoroastrianism, and he just drops the mic, goes to bed, and dies peacefully in his bed. Super nice and comfy death. Not very interesting, though, for our episode. There are other accounts, multiple other accounts, that say that he was in a campaign to his east, fighting the Masagetai people, better known to us as the Scythians, and their queen Tomyris. Basically, the story that we know of is that Cyrus laid a trap to the Masagetai people. He said, these people don't know anything about alcohol. They're a bunch of barbarians. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave a camp behind. It's going to look like we abandoned it, or maybe we fled. Then they're going to come in. They're going to be like, oh my God, wine. They're going to get pissed and super drunk. And then when they're hungover, we're going to come in and destroy them. And that's exactly what they did. And hearing about this treachery, the queen Tomyris of the Scythian people vowed revenge against Cyrus. She waited for the perfect opportunity, surprise attacked his camp at night, slew the great king, and then drenched his decapitated head in a pool of blood, proclaiming, "I told you I'd quenched your thirst for blood." We will talk more about Queen Tomyris in the next episode, which is about her. So, Cyrus the Great leads the Persian in Civilization 4 and 6. His leader bonus in Civilization 6 is called, the Fall of Babylon, and it gives them +2 movement for all units after declaring a surprise war. This is something of a mystery to me why they chose that particular bonus, because it does look like the Medians, then the Lydians declared war on Cyrus, and then Cyrus didn't exactly declare a surprise war on Babylon, though he did use subversive tactics with the use of his propaganda. And what's definitely true and relevant is that he receives additional loyalty on cities that he conquered because the people of Babylon accepted him as their liberator from the previous king who they didn't even like. If we look at the bonus of the Persian people, it's called satrapies, named after the county system that he invented. +1 trade route capacity once you unlock political philosophy, and domestic trade routes provide 2 gold and 1 culture for every domestic trade route. Roads built inside Persian territory are 1 level more advanced than usual. This is historically super significant because the Persians under Cyrus built a massive highway of 2,700 kilometers, and this allowed them to efficiently deliver the first ever mail system. The unique unit for the Persians is called the Immortals, the elite unit for the Persian Empire at the time. They were equipped with everything: swords, spears, bows. This is exactly why they have that duality of opportunities in the video game. And I will tell you that the Immortals were also kept to be exactly 10,000 men, so if anyone got sick or wounded, he was immediately replaced by another man. And last but not least, Perideza is a unique tile improvement possible to be built by the Persians, and it actually stems historically from these little internal garden/parks that the Persian Empire would construct. The Achemenid dynasty melded the Perideza with their royal hunting parks. Thanks for watching. If you stayed this long, you're clearly a history buff. Like and subscribe and all that shit. And yeah, next episode is about Tomyris, the queen of the Scythians, who killed our friend Cyrus. See you there.